Hey guys, Soulless Reviews here, feeling a little claustrophobic, and today I want to talk about the new Michael Christmas record, What a Weird Day. Now, Michael Christmas is kind of a hard band to find stuff on, and that's mainly because he doesn't have that much of a track record to his name. He's a Boston native that just kind of emerged out of nowhere. He started like any other rapper does, right? He's scribbling on a little notepad, performing his raps in school, creating some videos, and eventually he just casually caught fire. Now, I really don't know a whole lot other than that, except for the fact that he seems kind of like a clown, in the sense that he's more like a joke rapper, yet at the same time is someone you should take seriously. And that evidence comes from, obviously, his name being Michael Christmas, the way he titles his albums being the last project he dropped, which was his first project, Is This Art? And the fact that, while reviewing this guy, I figured out that most of his inspiration comes from eating Hot Pockets and watching television. So... I mean, honestly, here I'm expecting some kind of zany raps, but at the same time, I kind of want to get some maturity in here, too. I don't want this project to feed off the idea that this guy is some kind of crazy zany character, and get by with using that. I want it to have some kind of maturity and show me that he can be this crazy character, but at the same time exemplify some mature hip-hop, some good hip-hop at that, too. Make this an album that I'm going to enjoy at the same time for being humorous, and for being almost showing maturity in that you want to be an artist. This is what you want to do. You don't want to make a joke out of it. You're taking this seriously, but at the same time, joking around a little bit, which I have no problem with. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I am going to listen to Michael Christmas's new record, What a Weird Day, and then afterwards, I am going to tell you guys just how I feel about it. Okay, so what do we get with this new Michael Christmas record? Well, to an extent, I feel like he understood that he had to show some maturity in his music, and there's definitely a lot of mature subject matter here, but in doing so, I think he actually bored me a little bit. I mean, I really appreciate the fact that he was able to tell us of his old life, how it was a struggle, of his upbringings, how the hood was a dangerous place for him to be, and kind of some other topics here and there, but at the same time, I feel like he was pretty lazy with some of his delivery on this thing, and also at the same time, didn't bother to switch up the subject matter all that much. He really drew this album out. I think it's an 18 tracks long when it really should have been only like 12. Considering one half of these songs are about him struggling and his upbringings, and the other half are just about women. Now, one thing I'm going to commend him on right off the bat is he seems to have a good old school hip-hop feel. There was a lot of beats on here especially. I mean, the production, yes, a little, but mostly the beat selection he chose on this thing really had some old school hip-hop feel to it, and I kind of appreciated him for doing that. He made notion to Biggie, like, in some of the earlier songs on this project, and that kind of made me think, well, he may have took some influence off of Notorious B.I.G., and maybe even some earlier hip-hop artists like him, and that maybe is why there's this kind of old-school production on here. I was honestly enjoying this project a fair amount listening to this thing at the beginning of it, and I didn't mind when he took a slower approach, like on Are You Around, where all he was really talking about was chilling with some hoes, and it had a nice, funky, slow beat to it. I didn't mind that track, because it was slower than what the other tracks were, but at the same time, I didn't mind it all that much. It was just later on this project, he seemed to get lazy with his delivery, and he seemed to think that he could get by with making these kind of lazy-ish songs because of his fan base, even though it's not even all that big yet, which I don't really understand. What really made me say, no, I'm done, like I can't take this anymore, was the track Don't Talk About It with Dram. For some reason, they chose the instrumental to tap the same piano chord over and over again throughout the entirety of that song, and although, yeah, cool, I mean, it allowed for an interesting melody, maybe even a fourth into the song, it got really old really fast and became annoying, and it's like, you can quit that piano shit, like, that just really ruined it. And also the fact that they had some potential with Dram, I felt like he could have made a kind of upbeat and maybe a little bit of, like, Spanish, kind of like a cool, funky party song, but he kind of failed in doing that. It was really kind of sloppy and drawn out and weak. I didn't enjoy it. Or on the track Smoke, where essentially he's telling us about in the hood how really all he had was the smoke of a gun and the smoke from weed. Those are the two things that mainly just kind of captured what his life was about. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. You can make a cool song about that. But for some reason, he felt the need to sing a little bit, and that didn't go out very well. And in addition to that, he put his verses together very sloppily, and I felt like altogether, that track was a little annoying and something I mean, you had something good, but you squandered it with the way you delivered it, and I feel like he could have done so much better there. A fair amount of these tracks, especially the tracks toward the end, were you can skip over them, and also tracks I feel like you just take them out, and this thing could have been an easy 12 tracks, and it would have been even way better than it is now, but for some reason he felt the need to create a lot of tracks on here, and a lot of them were not all that good. But that is not to say that I didn't like songs on here. There were definitely a fair amount that I enjoyed, while also there being songs that I didn't, like I just mentioned. For instance, I like how the intro, when he's getting in the car with his friends and he's talking about how the fame, he's bigger, he's better, but he still likes being with his friends, he still likes relating back to when he didn't have all that fame, and how that leads into Everything Burrito. Which, let alone is a funny title, but I liked him describing how it didn't make sense how he was at this fame level. You know, he himself kind of downplayed himself. He's like, I'm trying really hard, but I mean, I don't think people are going to like what I'm talking about. And then for some reason, he picked up his fame like real quick, like people started to like him a lot. And he described how it doesn't make sense how he's in this position of fame, but he's still going to live it up anyways. I like the track Hate. It had a nice it had a heartbeat and kind of like a techno melody, and he had the line, I'm like a chubby R. Kelly, and that made me chuckle a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. And I also didn't mind Grab Her Hand, and that track kind of came off as a very silly, uninspirational track when I heard it at first, but then it kind of grew on me, the way him and Mac were almost intentionally making kind of bad lines, and I mean, I didn't mind the deep bass, and I actually thought the backup horns on that track were actually a nice touch. So overall, the sound of that track, I enjoyed it. The lyrics were kind of iffy for me, but at the end of the day, I kind of enjoyed how they were just kind of being some silly characters, and I think they played that off pretty decently. But like I mentioned in the beginning of this review, as much as I did like some of the beginning tracks because they had some substance to them, they seem to all relate back to the same thing, in that he kind of feels as though he shouldn't be in this position of fame, but still enjoy being in this position of fame, at the same time enjoys being with the people who he was upbringings with. I did like the idea that Look Up / Save the Day had. It was Ain't No Stars in the Hood. He had a thing on that track where he actually talked, and he explained how one day he just got a little high and he walked outside, not a cloudy night, and he looked up and there were just no stars and he was in the hood. And I like that idea, but at the same time, he's kind of reiterating about the hood and how it was bad, and when he already talked about how the hood just wasn't that good for him in a couple of tracks in the beginning, and at the same time the track was kind of very lazy and it didn't seem inspired. Like on Smoke, good idea, I like what you had going for it, but your delivery it was very lazy, and I feel like you just didn't give the emotion that track maybe should have had, and it especially fell off during Save the Day. I feel like it could have been just passable if it was just Look Up, but Save the Day it kind of dragged that track down, especially because it was like a really lazy second half. So really, guys, what I found myself enjoying the most is some of the beats on here. Like I said, old school hip-hop feel, and I actually enjoyed that. I feel like he did a good job. But at the same time, towards the second half of this project, he felt very uninspired, and he gave a very lazy delivery, which I felt like he could do much better, and he's not living up to his potential. And even then, he seems to kind of repeat what he's saying on some of these tracks. Like, you can kind of relate one track to the other one, and it makes it a little So it's not not something you want to go back to, but at the same time, it's something that's cool to hear once because he has a nice beat selection, and he's also he is kind of like a kooky character who has some kind of laughable lines in his verses. I was really vibing out to the first half of this. I think I enjoyed it, but then when we hit the second half, especially that dram track, I really did not like it. I felt like he was really getting lazy with what he was talking about, and overall the project was just okay. I feel like he can do much better. In an interview I read, he talked about how he wanted to spew out as much music as he can, as fast as he can, because he doesn't like he doesn't like seeming like he's not putting in work. He wants to feel like he's always putting in work, which I feel like that's a good theory to have, but at the same time, you should also take note that it takes time for greatness. You need to let yourself grow a little bit. You need to maybe develop more themes in your music. Maybe the sound he has is good. I feel like he can roll with the sound, but you need to develop some more topics you can talk about, because a large part of these tracks, they talk about you being in the hood and about how you feel like you should still be in the hood. You feel like you grew up too fast, and there's also tracks about you just talking about women and how just women are a large part of the life you're living now. And when saying that statement, I also want to talk about, just real quick, that Think You Grown. I actually enjoyed that track, Think You Grown. I thought it was actually a very, very nice track. It talks about how even when you think you're in this high state of fame and you think you're grown up, you don't need anybody anymore, you still feel like you're heavily connected to your family because you don't want to be completely separated from them. So you feel like you're kind of sore when you're missing them because you don't get to see them as much when you're in that kind of state of fame. So you think you're grown, but at the same time, you're still going to keep those family ties because you miss them so much. So that was actually one of the tracks towards the end of this project that I actually enjoyed. I thought it was a very nice track. But so in the end, nice beat selection, some decent production overall, and just some of the topics seem to talk about each other on the same project, and towards the end it gets a little unbearable, lazy, and just doesn't sound all that great. So, I mean, guys, if you like hip-hop, maybe check this out, because there's some stuff you might enjoy on here, but if you're just a general music listener, then there's no need to listen to this. It's really not all that great. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. If you'd like to like or subscribe, that'd be awesome. I'd really appreciate it, and till next time, Soulless Reviews.